All the major news stories made simple and easy for your listening pleasure. We'll break it down for you in keywords. And for the segment, we're joined by Adam. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is happening? I can't even meet you there. It's so low. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Trying to catch me off guard.
Yes, yeah. I'll mix things up a little bit.
That's quite successful. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Doing well in the heat?
You know, I'm surviving. And to be fair, we do work a great deal in well air-conditioned broadcasting stations.
No, so good, isn't it?
And the thing is, we need it to survive because that's how the radio system functions. That's my defense for any environmentalists out there judging me. It's not my choice. To keep our machines working, it needs to be AC'd properly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have a heat stroke in the middle of a broadcast, can you?
And that too. We'd like to protect our talents too.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. Let's jump into our keyword news segment. We're going to start off with the pandemic situation at home. Here's our first keyword of the day.
COVID woes.
All right, so the daily infection numbers are still quite alarming. Cases continue to soar. What's the latest, Adam?
Yeah, so we saw another record daily high yesterday of nearly 1,900 cases. That was a 531 jump from the day before. And usually at this time of the week, we do see the numbers increase because of more testing and stuff like that. And a lot of the infections are occurring in non-capital regions as well. So it is pretty much a nationwide spread at the moment. And health officials also believe that infections aren't likely to drop soon, unfortunately. So they're not very optimistic on that front. They worry that the virus curve may not have reached its peak yet as the Delta variant becomes the dominant strain. Level 4 distancing rules, they're still in place for the Seoul metropolitan area and other vacation hotspots. They'll be in place until August 8th, but it pretty much could be extended again if infections don't die down.
And they may even make the standing measures more strict if the numbers don't become manageable, right?
That's right. And health authorities have said they will review a plan to implement stricter virus curbs if the current restrictions prove to be ineffective. We saw these kind of measures being taken place before, where they have a certain level system in place and then customized measures.
When we had these like cluster infections are much more obvious at the start of the pandemic, those regions would basically have virtual lockdown measures.
That's right. So we could see some customized measures coming through, but we'll have to wait and see. And Korea is also working to boost its vaccination drive as well amidst this fourth wave of the pandemic by expanding inoculations to the younger population. That's where most of the infections are coming from recently. Right. The government has said that Moderna will resume its vaccine shipments to the country next week. So some of the supply issues have been resolved, apparently. It is still a delay, but better late than never, I guess. And hopefully these vaccinations will be
rolled
out properly and soon as well, and enough doses for everyone.
Because that's the only fundamental solution, it seems, to getting to the next step in curbing these daily infection numbers. But
experts do say that we still have to wait for the vaccine. So in the meantime, we still need to adhere to these social distancing rules and be vigilant and all the usual stuff.
And even after getting vaccinated, it seems not just South Korean health authorities, but the US CDC has also chimed in saying that we should keep our face masks on indoors and in crowded areas. On to our second keyword of the day.
Efficacy drop.
All right, so the problem is we keep saying vaccination is key.
Yeah.
But we do have to revisit the topic of how long that efficacy also stands in real life scenarios. Now, speaking of vaccines, the effectiveness of the Pfizer shot is under scrutiny as a recent study, actually prompted by Pfizer, right, shows that the vaccine's efficacy is to drop after 6 months. It happens gradually.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the efficacy of the Pfizer shot fell from 96% to 84% over 6 months. That's according to a new company-funded study that has yet to be peer-reviewed. The decline could fuel Pfizer's case that a third dose, otherwise known as this booster shot, will eventually be required. Now, the ongoing study found that there was an average decrease of about 6% every 2 months. But even with a slip in efficacy, the data indicates the vaccine offers protection 6 months later as well, so it's not completely useless, and the efficacy of the vaccine against severe disease, including hospitalizations, remained high at 97%. That's kind of the figure that health experts say people need to pay more attention to, the vaccines being effective against severe symptoms and illnesses.
And curbing fatality rates.
That's right. So that's where the vaccines prove to be most effective, and the 97% seems to certainly be showing that. Researchers will continue to observe participants of the study for up to 2 years. Combined with real-world data, they will determine whether a booster is likely to be beneficial after a longer interval. If the efficacy continued to decrease at the current rate, it could fall below 50% within 18 months, suggesting that booster shots could be needed. Pfizer already has its eye on a booster vaccine, announcing earlier this month, in fact, that it plans to ask the FDA to authorize a third dose. But the Biden administration maintains that people who have been fully vaccinated don't need booster doses yet. However, US health officials did note they may be needed later. So it's just the case. This is the same with any other type of vaccine, like a flu vaccine you get every year, because of course the effectiveness dies down after a certain period of time. It's not just a one-shot solves
Done
all
deal.
Kind of vaccine. And because it has many of the characteristics of influenza, this COVID-19, it's pretty much the same story with the vaccines as well. So it's not something to be too alarmed about.
All right. Thanks for managing expectations, too.
Yeah.
On to our third keyword of the day.
Mask mandate.
Now, staying in the U.S., the CDC has reversed a decision made just 2 months ago about mask wearing indoors. It now says vaccinated people should wear masks indoors. The problem is this will encourage more division for those who were skeptical about the vaccines and mask wearing in the first place. So run us through the details.
Yeah, so this U-turn comes as the Delta variant is pushing up infection numbers in the US. The spread is happening particularly in areas where vaccination rates are low. CDC officials also recommended universal masking for teachers, staff and students and visitors in schools, regardless of vaccination status.
But it is just a recommendation, right?
It is just
a
strong one, yes. But it is a recommendation. But they still suggest in-person learning should return in the fall in school with additional precautions.
All right.
Now, the guidance on masks in indoor public places applies in parts of America with at least 50 new cases per 1,000 people in the past week.
100,000 people?
Yes, 100,000 people in the past week. 50 out of 100,000 people, basically.
Right.
And officials say that includes about 60% of U.S. counties. New case rates are particularly high in the south and southwest. That's according to a CDC tracker. In Arkansas, Louisiana, and Florida, every county has a high transmission rate. The U.S. House is also reinstating its mask mandate as well, requiring all House lawmakers and their staff to wear a mask while in the House chamber, except when members are being recognized and speaking on the floor. They'll be fined if they don't wear a mask when entering the chamber. Now,
that probably didn't sit well with both sides of the political spectrum.
No, it didn't. And it certainly did provoke a furious reaction, especially from some Republicans. The House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, tweeted, quote, "Make no mistake, the threat of bringing masks back is not a decision based on science, but a decision conjured up by liberal government officials who want to continue to live in a perpetual pandemic state."
Those are some serious accusations,
that is
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that is a very strong tweet indeed. And of course, the other side of the aisle weren't happy. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, called McCarthy a moron for the comments. It's quite...
Okay.
It's quite, yeah.
All right, I can see
quite
why.
Strong back and
this
forth
makes
there.
Headlines.
Yeah, and this will only fuel kind of further political
existing tensions in the country. I think that is my bone to pick with this. Not the name calling, not the serious accusation, but what it actually provokes in the general public that's already inclined to be divisive.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion and division surrounding these masks and vaccine rules, and if the political and these lawmakers are at each other's throats, then it doesn't really help the situation.
All right, that's where the U.S. stands. On to our fourth keyword of the day.
Fed freezes rates.
All right, turn to U.S. economy now. The Federal Reserve has left interest rates alone and reaffirmed its commitment to other easy monetary policies. So what's the latest?
Yeah, so it's pretty much widely expected. The Fed held the benchmark rate at a range between 0% and 0.25%, where it has been since March 2020. The Fed will also keep purchasing $120 billion in bonds each month, a policy known as quantitative easing that's designed to keep credit cheap. But in their post-meeting statement, policymakers said the economy had made progress toward their goals on employment and inflation. That's a sign the central bank could be inching closer to scaling back its asset purchases at upcoming meetings. The next one's coming up in August. One thing weighing on the labour market and the economy are rising coronavirus cases, of course, in the US, with the Delta variant surging in pockets of the country as well. Also, despite consumer prices running at their highest since just before the financial crisis of 2008, Fed officials insist the current surge is temporary and will abate once supply chain bottlenecks ease and demand returns to the normal level. So they're not too alarmed about the current inflation at the moment.
All right, bringing things back closer to home. This is our fifth keyword of the day.
Costly vegetables.
Now, speaking of inflation, Korea's vegetable prices have been skyrocketing recently amid the heat wave. So it's two perhaps different variables at play, and it's not helping for consumers have to pay a higher price for our veggies. What's the latest?
So if you want to cook at home, it's going to be a bit expensive at the moment.
It's already expensive.
It's already expensive, yes, that's right. The average price of lettuce increased a whopping 76% this month from a year earlier. It's now at 41,301 per 4 kilograms. The price of spinach has also nearly doubled during the same period as well. The price jump is mainly due to shortage of production due to the sweltering hot weather, and it's damaging crops, and so it's in short supply but in high demand. The basic economy, basically.
Sure.
And the prices of Napa cabbage and leek have actually gone down as their production was normalized after the country went through a record-long monsoon season last year.
Okay.
So they had that kind of weather-related problem last year, and it seems to be normalizing now. But authorities are saying they're going to be keeping a close eye on the vegetables and crops that have managed to stabilize in price, because, of course, this heat wave is happening now, and it could affect those crops
and future produce. And it's something that's not going to ease over the next few years. It might potentially get worse, right? All right, global warming. On to our sixth keyword of the day.
Low birth rate.
Now, Korea's chronic low birth rate, we've talked about it several times on the show, but it's showing no signs of improvement. So what does the latest data showcase?
Nothing better, unfortunately. In fact, things seem to be looking worse. According to Statistics Korea, the number of newborns was just over 22,000 in May. That's down 3.5% from a year earlier. It was the lowest May reading since relevant data was first compiled 40 years ago. And it also marks the 66th consecutive month of on-year decline. Meanwhile, the number of deaths increased by 5%, causing a decline in population for the 19th consecutive month. The number of marriages in May also dropped by 11% on year. That's kind of a figure that is significant, because usually in Korea, births happen after marriage. The population decline has been a long-standing issue in Korea, and there's fears over a drop in labor population and productivity. That would drive down the local economy unless productivity efficiency is high enough to cover the manpower loss. Now, Korea's technical advances have improved a lot over the years, but it still lags a bit behind major economies, and legal and regulatory problems are also dragging down on productivity efficiency as well. There's a lot of policies in place to try and curb or try and improve the situation. This government, the previous government, and governments before that, and they don't seem to be working that well, unfortunately.
Because it doesn't change fundamental questions like, can I afford to raise a child? Or things like that. How much does it cost to raise a child in Korea anyway? Things that can't be solved easily.
Yeah, I mean, I can rant and rave for hours about this, but a lot of the policies are very superficial at the moment. They don't address, as you say, the fundamental issues, and many Koreans, the general public, don't don't feel that they will prosper under the current circumstances in the country. And a lot of them, are going overseas as well to try and find a better life. And
but I do invite the
unfortunate.
question of what can the government do to address such a complicated fundamental question, right?
It is a very hard topic indeed, but as you said, the fundamentals should be the focus anyway with any policy. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Adam, for today's discussion. Insightful as always.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.